Hello everyone and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing a deep dive into some massive year-to-date headline news trends that you've probably seen popping up around Washington, tariffs, and cross-border trade. We are looking specifically at a fascinating and honestly totally game-changing shift in the Ontario-Michigan waste corridor. To give you some context on why this matters right now, every single year, roughly 3.46 million tons of municipal solid waste, or MSW, gets shipped right across the border from Ontario, Canada, and dumped into U.S. landfills in Michigan. That's enough to make up a staggering 14.35% of all the waste disposed of in Michigan landfills. It is a massive, incredibly messy physical liability. But what if it didn't have to be? What if you could turn that exact liability into a highly profitable, tradable asset? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore today.
So, it begs the question, how exactly do you short a landfill? It sounds crazy, right? This brings us to what the source material brilliantly calls the trader's metaphor. I really want to challenge you to completely rethink how you view a dumpster full of chaotic construction waste. Because right now, the industry looks at that dumpster as just a giant cost center. You pay someone to move it, and then you pay a hefty tipping fee just to bury it in the ground. But what if we took standard financial trading mechanics and applied them to that dumpster? What if, instead of just throwing it away, you actually took a short position against the rapidly rising costs of traditional disposal?
Okay, here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Shorting the landfill. 2. Tariffs and the capacity cliff. 3. The 6-layer architecture. 4. Edge AI compliance gate. And finally, number 5. The carbon dividend payoff. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, shorting the landfill. Let's get right into it.
Now, 905 Wood is absolutely not your traditional recycling plant. In fact, they explicitly reject standard buzzwordy industry terms like circular economy platform. Instead, think of it as a financial engine. It's a digital refinery. It literally takes a short position on a load's residual value. What this means is that it captures the financial spread as the value of avoiding the landfill inevitably skyrockets. So every single load of wood routed through this refinery workflow is a calculated bet. A bet that the price of not bearing it will rise way faster than the cost of actually running the refinery's compliance infrastructure. It's taking literal trash and turning it into an audit-grade financial instrument.
Moving right along to Section 2, tariffs and the capacity cliff.
There's a massive incoming squeeze that's driving this value up, and it's tied directly to current news out of both Washington and Ontario. In Q2 2026, Michigan has a proposed 14 times tipping fee hike, taking costs straight up to $5. Then fast forward a bit to August 19, 2026, when Washington's U.S. Section 338 applies a massive 50% duty to finished Canadian wood. We are talking about a huge tariff wall hitting cross-border logistics head-on. And finally, looking ahead to 2034, we slam into the Ontario landfill capacity cliff. Now, this isn't some theoretical projection. It's an actual line item in Doug Ford's provincial legislation marking the literal date Ontario runs completely out of municipal solid waste disposal space. These dates create a brutal financial squeeze that makes the old dump-and-bury model financially toxic.
And you know, the squeeze is already happening locally with the Circle Levy, that's Ontario's circular economy tax. Check this out. If your dumpster is legally classified as clean wood, you're taxed at a highly favorable $5 per ton. Not bad, right? But if it accidentally gets classified as mixed waste, bam, you are hit with a punishing penalty rate of $60 per ton. This is the stark difference between the physical reality of a dump and the financial reality of the regulatory ledger. Classifying that wood correctly right at the source is absolutely paramount to surviving these rising costs.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this exact number, $1,053. Hitting that clean band saves exactly $1,053 per 144-yard mothership trailer load. By simply proving your waste is clean wood rather than mixed, you totally transform a standard everyday dumpster run into a masterclass in levy avoidance. But here's the catch. How do you actually prove it to the regulators without a shadow of a doubt? Let's find out in Section 3, the 6-layer architecture.
To make this work, a piece of wood travels from a chaotic construction site all the way to a registered climate removal certificate through 6 very distinct workflow layers. Layer 1 is intake, classifying the wood instantly right at the source. Layer 2 is logistics, which physically moves the bins securely with full chain of custody. Layer 3 is regulatory, automatically generating the request for quote and necessary verification paperwork to satisfy the government. Layer 4 is value realization, providing transparent pricing and invoicing.
Layer 5 is reporting, generating the digital refinery application workflow UI/UX output PDF documentation that builds the shield for cross-border trade. And finally, Layer 6 is scientific validation, where the wood is ultimately converted and validated for the high-purity biocarbon market. Every single layer is perfectly built to survive a strict regulatory audit.
Which brings us perfectly into Section 4, Edge AI Compliance Gate.
Get this, you don't need some massive million-dollar supercomputer on the construction site to manage this level of compliance. You literally just need a smartphone acting as a highly advanced compliance officer. 905 Wood uses a Google Pixel 10 Pro hardware running Android 16, utilizing the LiteRT AI stack features. The device uses a Gemma 4 classification model to visually inspect and classify the load at the bin incredibly fast. We're talking under 500 milliseconds. Then, using the phone's built-in Titan M2 hardware security chip, it creates a hold-to-seal cryptographically pinned audit record. This locks in the decision so nobody can tamper with it, guaranteeing total security. This instantly proves the load is clean wood, which makes every downstream regulatory layer completely honest, transparent, and defensible.
The sources actually refer to this digital refinery application as the sentient bridge. And honestly, what an incredibly powerful metaphor that is. Construction sites are notoriously messy, right? They're chaotic, they're disorganized. But on the flip side, the biocarbon market, where you actually sell these carbon credits, requires extreme purity and flawless data. By operationalizing the Google Pixel 10 Pro and LiteRT's AI stack, 905 Wood is securing Ontario's industrial leadership in the global circular bioeconomy. The AI stack is that sentient bridge, safely connecting two completely different worlds, translating chaotic liability into strict financial compliance.
And that bridge extends right across the borders into Layer 5's reporting. Because of the cryptographic verification data captured at Layer 1, the AI uses a 31 billion parameter dense model to automatically generate a 9-point certificate of origin output PDF. This specifically validates an exemption under USMCA Chapter 4, also known as CUSMA, classifying the material under the Harmonized System Code 3825.0. Why does all this jargon matter to you? Well, because having this AI-verified data builds a digital UI/UX workflow and cryptographic shield that completely bypasses that looming 50% Section 338 tariff wall from Washington that we talked about earlier. The wood simply crosses the border, totally exempt and totally clean.
Let's look at the ultimate result in Section 5, the carbon dividend payoff.
When this is modeled out for a mid-market general contractor generating roughly 200 loads a week, the math is just staggering. That circle levy avoidance we mentioned earlier, that alone saves $10.75 million a year. That basically pays for the entire infrastructure and disposal service. But the real, massive trade is Layer 6, the carbon dividend. This is created when the clean wood is verified and converted into registered climate removal certificates. At standard book rates, that is $28.3 million a year. But at spot high market premiums, it hits nearly $80 million annualized. It's wild. The disposal fees simply pay for the rails, while the carbon dividend becomes the massive profit center.
Seriously, let me emphasize this specific number for a second. $7,660. This is the spot-high carbon dividend premium for a single mothership load. This exact dollar figure is what makes the entire digital refinery incredibly solvent. It completely upends the traditional economics of the 3.46 million tons of municipal solid waste currently crossing the border to Michigan landfills. I really want to wrap up our explainer today by reading this powerful quote directly from the source material. The metaphor is not circular economy. The metaphor is a trader on the desk. 6 layers under the trade, 10 years of steepening price curve to run against. The short is on. It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? If an edge AI stack running on a smartphone can completely flip the economics of cross-border construction waste and tariffs, how might AI transform the biggest, most chaotic liabilities in your own industry into highly tradable assets? Thank you so much for joining me today for this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you in the next explainer.